Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Covert, and I am here with Symphoria's music director, Lawrence Lowe, and our guest pianist, Sara Davis Buechner. And we want to share with you our pre-concert talk. Thank you so much for joining us. And Larry, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Hi, Sara Davis Buechner. Great to have you virtually in, we're really looking forward to having you in Syracuse for this, but right now you are in Philadelphia.
Yes, that's right.
So, you and I got to work together for the first time this year. It was the start of a glorious year. And
it was a fresh
this is back in January.
It was a fresh new year of 2020, and I thought this was just going to be a fabulous year, especially starting it with your wonderful conducting and a wonderful orchestra there in West Virginia. We had a wonderful time. So it looked like, New Year's joy. Little did we know, but we're proceeding with the best of it. Yes.
Yeah. But we did. I'm glad that we had this to look forward to after a drought of performing. It's been so weird for musicians. We're thankfully in Syracuse off to a good start. We've had several concerts already, and we are adjusting to this new normal of live streaming our concerts. And we're so excited to have you in Syracuse for this. What's the summer been like for you? I mean, I'm sure you had many things that were planned that just flew out the window.
Well, I had a very busy summer planned, actually, and I was lucky, I think luckier than many musicians. Many of those things came to fruition, but of course, virtually online. There was the Chautauqua Festival and the Overture Festival up in Canada. And of course, there really wasn't much performing. I had a couple of video recitals that I played on this piano here at home, and that's been a whole new experience. I sort of feel like I'm running my own radio show in 1937, Breakfast with Roger and Irene or something like that, where you greet people high atop the Center City apartments of, whatever. So that was fun. But I've done an awful lot of teaching because, of course, those summer festivals are places where young pianists go to study. And the teaching on Zoom and online systems is quite intense, actually, and in some ways more exhausting than teaching in person. I mean, in person, I'm likely to walk around the room and illustrate a Baroque dance or two, or things like that, all kinds of amusing things. But on Zoom, you're sort of staring at the screen, so it's intense, and a lot of preparation is over. The summer, I think, has been largely exhausting, and I would say, though, I have been so grateful that we do have these internet platforms to work with. If we didn't, we'd really be at sea. And I'm grateful for music totally, because at the beginning of the pandemic, I actually had several friends who passed away from coronavirus. And this has been healing. Everything that I do touched to music has healed the wounds very, very well. So, and I'm really looking forward. Mozart Mozart is closer to my heart than rice pudding, even, I would say. So, looking forward to this very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about what this particular concerto means to you? I know one of the reasons that we chose one of the ones that were scored for a smaller orchestra is simply because of the size of the orchestra, and with the piano on the stage, we couldn't put a giant number of musicians on the stage.
Sure.
So we came to you and asked about this particular concerto. Can you tell us a little bit about what the listeners will hear?
Yeah, Mozart was very proud of this piece, and also there are three other concertos he wrote around the same time for the same kind of small combo, 413, 414, and 415, we call them in the biz by their Kirchhoff number. This is 449 in E-flat major. And he wrote very proudly to his father about this concerto. He was particularly proud of the finale, which has some fugal overtones. The opening is a rather regal and stately theme in three, which is unusual for Mozart. So almost like threatening to bust out into a Viennese waltz, which it never really does. Thankfully, I guess. Second movement, a very contemplative movement in 2/4, which has been great solace to work on and over the summer, and I think the listeners will particularly like that. I just love that theme. Etc., etc. And then that last movement of which Mozart was so proud is, as I mentioned, sort of fugal, which means that it has polyphonic lines, separate lines of music that go in and out, almost like threads in a tapestry at high speed. It's very, very impressive how Mozart achieves kind of a great variety of sounds, from great intimacy in that second movement to kind of glorious texture in the grand finale, all with, yes, a very reduced kind of orchestration. And so it's clear that Mozart intended this for sort of intimate gatherings, something where he would, of course, play his own piano part and probably conduct from the keyboard as well. Now, unfortunately, I didn't do so well. I didn't do as well in conducting class as you did. I freely.
Well,
I was just staring at the score. If
you would like to.
No, this is my baton technique. What do you think? I sort of holding a pool beat. Yeah. Follow me. Yes, exactly. I'm very, very happy you are up there doing that very difficult work of that. And I know I can rely on you. I'll follow you anywhere. Okay.
Well,
on the stage.
That's okay. We just want to clarify this. I do want to say, we when you work together for the first time, you never know what kind of chemistry you have, and you and I I felt immediate connection to you, to your personhood, to your playing, to the way that you express yourself physically. The orchestra really just can find a way to connect to you immediately. You just have that presence on the stage.
So sweet.
And and I was thinking as you were talking through the piece, noting the small orchestra and thinking of myself, the role of conductor. The smaller the orchestra, the more I try to be a conduit between the soloist and the musicians straight through, where it's not everyone just focusing on me, even though I know that especially with all the barriers that we have between musicians and the spacing, that conductors are actually needed more than usual in these situations. But what I'll try to do is just have that intimacy that you were talking about in the second movement throughout the entire concerto, so that there is this direct line between the musicians and you, and I know that will happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too. I'm sure it's going to be a very, 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 very satisfying performance. I think that's what I'm looking forward to. I love being on stage with you, Larry, and I felt exactly the same way. So I think we'll have some good laughs and some good camaraderie, and I think some very good Mozartian spirit. It's a very good humored piece in its finale, a very optimistic kind of piece to open the season with, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we need. One last thing before I let you go, how many, because we were just talking about before we started taping, just the sheer number of concertos that a pianist has potentially in their repertoire. How have you managed that through the years? And just like when people ask for any particular concerto, just, what about this one? Because there's so many options for piano. How do you manage that, and what's it like as a soloist?
Sometimes that's the most difficult question about the whole engagement. Of course, it depends on the orchestra, what the orchestra's capabilities are, and then, of course, my mood at the moment, what it is that I'm deeply into. I always had a kind of a boundless appetite for piano repertoire. It's so rich and varied. I always wanted to swallow as much of it as possible, and I have played actually about 110 different piano concertos in my life. Some of them were one shots, so I won't be repeating them. But others, I find these days I'm more apt to suggest newer pieces by younger composers that I figure they need a shot right now. I sort of owe that to the younger generation. But I sure like Mozart. He's pretty good too. So.
He's a pretty good songwriter. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I really look forward to this. It's going to be such a great time, a great reunion for you and me, and a great performance we look forward to with the Mozart. Thank you, Sara Davis Buechner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and now I'm very pleased to welcome to our pre-concert time our wonderful program annotator, Peter Rabinowitz. Peter, hello.
Hi, Larry. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited about this program.
Well, me too. And let me tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited about the program. It is, of course, we have Mozart and Felix Mendelssohn, but we're also starting off with a piece by Fanny Mendelssohn, which is pretty unusual and I think gives the program a real extra spark. As you may know, Fanny was Felix's older sister. And this is an absolutely brilliant work. It's her only orchestral work that we know of anyway, written in 1832. And if I can go back a little bit, one of the things that I like about this piece is that there's a certain poignance to it because it reminds us of all the music by women in the 19th century that has been or may have been forgotten, things that we don't know anything about. As you know, and the audience may know, I'm actually a literature professor, or I was a literature professor until I retired. And 19th century fiction is full of stories about women who learned to play the piano, who learned to paint, who learned to sing. And I think many of us read these books and assume that they were all kind of mediocre talents, you know, just girls learning how to knock out a few little very simple things. But maybe, you know, as we think back, maybe they were supremely talented. Fanny Mendelssohn, who might very well have gotten forgotten, was a brilliant, brilliant performer, a brilliant composer. You know, at the age of 13, she could play from memory the first book of Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier. Terrific prodigy. Almost as great a prodigy, maybe as great a prodigy as her brother. So, Larry, what do you think about the piece itself? I mean, that's a little bit about kind of why it's exciting to do it and opening up a new thing. But what do you think about the piece itself?
I love how the piece has multiple starts in a way, you know, these kind of transitional sections at the beginning before it hits its main, the body of the work itself. And they kind of range from, you know, you said the word poignancy in a different context, but like the very opening has a poignancy and emotional color with its harmony it's actually kind of similar, reflective harmony, a little bit somber to the beginning of the Scottish, kind of related to that. But then it has this sort of almost fanfare restart that transitions it to this effervescence, and the rest of the piece has this incredible energy that it's like the simmering pot, you know, where there's always a lot of energy with the fast notes of the 16ths. And it's something that you hear a lot of in the whole, I think, the body of Mendelssohn symphony, Felix Mendelssohn symphonies. And I know that in your program notes, you wrote something like who influenced whom, like in which direction was this influence? And this was written before the symphony that we're going to play. And I think that there is a little bit of this feeling of, I mean, like when I work through this piece, that there are things in here that could clearly be influencing what Felix Mendelssohn wrote eventually in that Scottish symphony. So it's fascinating to contemplate that this is not a piece that's in the standard repertoire at this point. I mean, it's not that often performed. Joanne Folletta edited the edition that we're performing on, who is the music director of the Buffalo Philharmonic, and that you know very well, Peter. And we're so grateful for her to bring this edition to the masses, and hopefully it will get the credit that it deserves. And we're very excited to be performing it.
Yeah, you know, just go back a step. Then I want to talk maybe about the Mendelssohn, but the Felix Mendelssohn piece. You know, it's so hard to get out of that habit of referring to the composers by their last names, even when there are brother and sister teams or husband and wife teams. I just can't even imagine what this household was like with these two brilliant talents present at the same time. They both got the same education. There was lots of music being performed all the time in that house. Weekly, they had a lot of money so that they could afford to perform. And what you say about that effervescence, the Scottish Symphony is certainly a fabulous piece. I'll throw a curveball at you because we didn't talk beforehand about how I would mention this. But if I sit down and I try to imagine, just say, so you said to me, Scottish Symphony, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's the first thing that you hum? It's actually the ending of the last movement, the coda to the last movement, which is this really phenomenal thing which comes out of nowhere. And it's been very problematic since the piece was written. In fact, Otto Klemperer, the famous German conductor, hated it so much that he rewrote the ending to get rid of it. So how do you feel when you get to this sudden shift at the end where the whole mood of the piece changes and everything?
Do you mean in the
last
which
movement?
Mendelssohn are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about in the Felix Mendelssohn.
Yeah, sorry. I'm talking about the Scottish Symphony.
Because there is this. No, I knew you were talking about Scottish Symphony, but then I was also thinking about the way that it shifts at the end of the overture. But that's a completely separate, and that's not a necessarily new theme that comes out. But I love that because what happens right before that final rising theme that you were talking about is that it has this sense of there's something very special going to happen. It's one of the quietest moments in a pretty energetic dance-like final movement, and then this completely different theme that has all this churning in the strings, but the horns, just this rising theme. The way I feel about that is it's like we have this last thing that we can present to the audience that they haven't heard before, that's brand new, and that if we make it just like coming from a distance, then it's something that we all kind of looking off into the horizon and experiencing, and then it's getting closer and closer. And I think the effect is just grandeur, landscape. To me, I kind of, as I hear music, like many people, you can kind of imagine imagery. And for me, it is just this, the cliffs, the Scottish, the waters, and just the sun rising over the water, and this amazing folk theme coming out of the horizon. And I love that moment, and it's what makes the symphony so unique.
Do you find, you mentioned thinking of the cliffs and the waters and everything. There's always been a little debate about how Scottish the Scottish Symphony is. Do you find a lot of Scotland in it, or do you find it more generically countryside, or what?
Oh, well, I mean, because I'm a person who will just try to find those kinds of imagery. So yeah, I definitely do. And I've been to Scotland. I know that I can kind of take the music and just put it there. Who knows what the actual, the source of anything is. But I take, that second movement, the clarinet theme, and I take this theme from the last movement. Those two are the things that I sort of take very directly in my own mind as having some sort of Scottish edge to it. And I even take the melancholy opening as well. If we just kind of imagine that he had this trip and he experienced the countryside and how it made him feel, and maybe that when he wrote that introduction to the first movement, that is something, that longing, that nostalgia is something that he felt when he was there and after he left, reflecting on his time. So, I'll just put it there. And I think that everyone can create their own stories when they listen to music. And that's certainly something that helps me when you're looking at something so abstract as just notes on the page that we hear, and they're just laid out. And to find meaning as human beings, we will latch on to whatever experiences we have. And for me, it's just simply the subtitle.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say about the longing and this nostalgia. And I think that's really there. And I think it may be a little bit unique in Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn, as we know, was an absolutely perfect writer. Like Mozart, there are no wasted notes. Everything is absolutely right there. You think of him as somebody who wrote everything really, really quickly. Yet that journey that he took to Scotland was in 1829. He didn't complete the symphony for another 13 years. So there may well have been that kind of regret that he's not still there, or, distance from those memories. I think that's really important.
Well, I'm excited that we're presenting these two pieces by the Mendelssohn siblings on the same program. And I do want to point out for listeners who have been going to a lot of Symphoria concerts through the years, we did perform this symphony once before at a concert that had Itzhak Perlman many years ago. And I'm excited that we can revisit this. It's one of the few pieces that we're doing for a second time in our short history. And so it must be a very meaningful piece if we're already performing it again. So Peter, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thanks for having me.
And look forward to the concert.
Yeah.